Does grief ever go away?
When will it go away? Does it ever go away? I think it's natural to ask the question.
I think that we're asking the wrong question there.
I almost fear not having grief in my life.
I sometimes think, oh my gosh, am I losing my memory of her?
No one wants to lose the memory of someone they lost. That would be a sad day. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Good Grief. I'm joined by my incredible wife, Kaylee, and today we're going to be answering the question,
does grief ever go away?
it's huge.
We get asked it a lot.
Yeah, we have it all the time. And so we thought, why don't we do a podcast about this? So
Yeah.
we're going to be talking through that. But first of all, we've got some exciting things coming up. Next week, what have we got? An event with Christine Wren
Yep.
on the journey of healing and grief and loss.
She's very acquainted with grief.
Yeah, Christine, good friend of ours. She lost her dad when she was 16. Then her brother,
Disappeared, left.
35 years,
Yep.
was gone and then walked back into their life. And so very different, strange grief there. And then her husband has also lost his daughter as well. So they've been journeying through this for a long time. She's actually been teaching and helping people through the process herself for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
She is faith-filled, loves God, a minister and also a prophet. And so she's coming into our Good Grief Club to share all things on the grief journey. What are some of the points?
Yeah, so she runs a course called Heart Matters, and she's going to be talking through where can I find my answers? How can I find peace through all of this? You know, where does God sit?
And how to survive the drowning feeling that I'm going through.
Yeah, the torrents and the waves of grief, and just to name a few. Yeah.
So it's going to be a really, really powerful session that we'd love to invite you to for absolutely free. So if you'd like to come and join us, we're going to pop the link in the comments below.
Check it
and
out.
You can jump into the Good Grief Club. That's also where we hold our private community off socials with women all over the world who are grieving.
Yeah.
And it's a place where you can connect with people with similar losses. What are some of the groups that we've got?
Yeah, so we've got, parent loss, sibling loss, miscarriage, child.
Yeah, it's quite an extensive
Yeah.
list. But it's also where we hold monthly boost calls where you can jump on if you're just needing a boost and to connect with other grievers and ourselves. We do those monthly. And then we hold expert workshops as well.
Yeah, lots of people are finding grief buddies.
Yeah, so jump on the link below and we'll see you in there. The event is next week and all the details and links are all inside there for you.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you to miss it.
So should we jump in?
Yeah, let's jump in.
Remind us of the question.
Does grief ever go away?
What do you think?
Look, I think there's a short answer, no. So thanks for coming. We'll see you next time. No, just kidding.
Wrap the podcast
Yeah,
up.
wrap it up. Yeah, no. What do you think?
I think no as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot of thoughts around it.
It does.
Yeah.
Let's break it down.
Let's break it down.
I wish I could go into a rap there.
Save the reps for off the podcast. All right, just save them. Look, this question is super common. When will it go away? Does it ever go away? I think it's natural to ask the question, first of all. But when we really think about that question, and if we sort of think about grief being the result of our love for that person or that pet, and that's the reason why we're experiencing grief, then we almost are asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
Because if I were to ask you, will your love ever go away for your mum? How would you answer that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a stronger no.
Yeah.
So then if your grief is a result of that absolutely not love disappearing, then the answer to that is no.
Yeah. I think that we're asking the wrong question there, and the answer that you're looking for is not going to come from that question. You need to
Totally.
ask a different question.
Yeah. And so I think, first of all, just it's helpful to understand that grief is a natural process of loss or trauma or separation. It's natural. And so if you're not experiencing grief, that would be abnormal. But for someone to die and to experience grief, totally normal. However, it changes Like,
Absolutely does, yeah.
it's so, like, we've been on it now for 12 years and it just changes so much. I almost fear not having grief in my life.
That's a thought. Yeah. And why is that?
Well, I think my relationship with my dad has grown more, and I've said this before, it's grown more post his death than while he was alive. I've been so much more intrigued and curious about how he did things and relationships he had with friends and business and how, and now becoming a dad, it's like, how did he parent? And so I don't have him to ask anymore.
Because often when the person's alive, we take for granted asking them all these things.
Man, if I could go back and ask him those questions. But so
100%,
that's the
yeah.
thing. So like with mum over the last 12 years, I'm just asking questions. How did he do this? How did you guys navigate these areas or challenges? And so I feel like I know him way better now, which is crazy. So my relationship's gone deeper with dad because of grief. And so the reason I fear grief not being in my life is because I would actually feel separated from my dad. If I wake up one day and I can't feel that tug on my heart or that deep yearning to hug him again or to talk to him or ask him questions, man, I'd rather be dead.
Yeah, I've thought about it, and I think that I'm in the same boat because I feel like my memory of her is tied to the grief. So like I sometimes think, oh my gosh, am I losing my memory of her? Like, is it getting dimmer? And so like, yeah, I would feel the same, that if I just lost my grief altogether, I'd be scared that my memory of her would go.
Fully. And that's
Yeah.
the last thing we want.
Yeah.
No one wants to lose the memory of someone they lost. That would be a sad day.
It would, hey.
I would rather be sad now, longing for them, than not long for them, lose the memory of them. That would be far sadder. So I would have the grief any
The
day.
sadder of two sads.
The sadder of two sads.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other interesting point is like turning to Jesus and understanding that in Isaiah it says that he is, and referring to Jesus, he is a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And on one of our previous episodes, Clarissa talked about this idea that being acquainted with grief in the Hebrew actually means being good friends with grief. And so if Jesus is our model and he was good friends with grief, then I need to also learn that process as well. And that takes time.
Sure.
That is not something you learn when you get the phone call or you find out. That's not something you learn in those moments.
And you're like, okay, sweet. Yep, now friends with grief. No, it doesn't happen like that.
You're probably enemies with grief,
Yeah.
to be honest. That's where I was at.
Yeah.
There was no way I was lifting my hands in worship and opening my Bible and, no, I wasn't pressing in like that. If anything, I was running.
Yeah. Jesus, he lost friends, family, his dad died, his friend Lazarus died. I know he had other friends die. What?
Oh, I'm reading this book about the questions Jesus asked, and it's relevant to this conversation because in the Bible, theologians have pulled it down to Jesus answering only between 3 and 6 questions. They debate over that, but there was no more. So Jesus got asked so many questions. Why didn't you do this? What do you think about this? The word says this, how do you think about it? He only answered between 3 and 6 in the whole of the New Testament, right?
That's wild.
But he asked 307 questions. And so it's just fascinating the fact that Jesus, who has the answers, only answered a handful, but he asked of his disciples, of the Pharisees, of Samaritans, so many more questions. And I think when I reflect on that, he's not like we have questions, right? When our loved ones die or a pet dies, like why and how, all of these questions. And we wonder why we don't get an answer straight away. I think Jesus is asking questions back to us in response to our questions. And it's for us to pull those apart and work out where we land with them. And so it gives me comfort, one, knowing that, okay, some of my questions haven't been answered. That's okay, because the disciples didn't get their questions answered. But also that I think the answer is in the question. How can this grief serve me? How can this grief enable me to help others? There are way more questions that come from our losses.
And we already did kind of answer this question with a question, didn't we? Will grief ever go away? Will your love ever go away?
Totally.
The answer is no to both of those. Yeah. But grief does look different as you go along. Hey, and it's different for everyone. Timeline's different, all those sorts of things. But you grow with grief.
Totally. That's a great way of reminding ourselves. You grow with it. And like if you were thinking, we were talking about this before, if you had like a graph for those listening and you had your y-axis, which is sort of north and south, and your x-axis east and west, east and west?
East axis and the east and west.
I'm totally
not
a math teacher or a physics teacher. Okay.
Geography.
So y-axis, if that was like your pain, and 100 is the top level of your pain threshold, and then on the x-axis you've got time and your relationship with that person. So when the moment they die, your pain is at its highest at that very point in time.
So you kind of start backwards. Instead of starting at 0, you're
100 pain.
Start at 100.
100 pain, time resets to 0. As we know in grief, like time that's a marker. And we refer to, like we do it all the time, was that before they died or after they died? So time resets. And as your pain is at its highest, it does take time, but it also takes your relationship with that loved one growing as that time travels along for the pain to start to alleviate or subside or change. Never will that pain go away completely, but it does alleviate. But it does take time, and it takes your relationship with the grief growing, but also the relationship with your person as well.
I also think it's a good reminder for tools and resources that also help. I think we can't just go along and expect grief to just do its thing. I think we do actually have to take responsibility as well and find things that will help us through.
Totally.
Like tools and resources, experts, a psychologist, community.
Yeah, we talked about it a couple of episodes ago around our good grief model and the 3 core elements that you need to start walking towards processing your grief and finding peace and purpose again. So you can jump back to episode 50. It's called An Introduction to Processing Grief, and hear more about that there. But yeah, coming back to the question, will grief ever go away? I think if you can walk away with one thing from this episode, it's learning to reframe that question into, how can this grief serve me? What can this grief teach me about my relationship and love for my loved one? What might this look like in the way that now I show compassion and empathy to others that lose people? I think some of those questions, if we reframe that question, can really serve us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Good points.
Other thoughts that you've got?
I think we pretty much summed it all up. My mum brain is
kicking into full gear.
Yeah, it's kicking in. That's my capacity for today.
You've done well.
Hope I put something in there that someone took away.
Not easy to talk about grief when you got mum brain.
No. I think they're very similar brains as well.
For sure.
So I feel for all you mums out there who are grieving. That's double trouble. So my heart goes out to you. Big love.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Nice little short episode. Hopefully you finished your coffee and your croissant. I can't even get my words out right.
Yep. It's been a good one.
It's been a good one. hopefully you've laughed at us and it's brought some relief to you somewhere.
At us and with us.
But hey, like we said at the start, if you want to join us for our grief workshop with Christine Wren, she's going to be teaching the journey of grief and loss.
Love to have you there.
You'll hear her journey, but also really practical tools to help you along the way. Jump into the link below. You can get access for free, and we'd love to have you in there with us, and look forward to seeing you on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Come join us.
Until next time, big love from both of us.
Ciao.